my mum was taking me to obviously the GP, and I'd gone to the hospital, had bloods, and I was referred to Birmingham Children's Hospital. So it was like 6 weeks before actually going up to Birmingham. But I remember during that time I had actually turned like fully yellow. So I went to Birmingham for a biopsy, and I remember like because obviously people say you probably don't remember that you were 6, but I remember it clearly because it was Halloween and I was absolutely fuming. I wasn't gonna be able to go trick or treating like everyone else, and I had gone in for a biopsy. I remember it clearly because they let me wear my little pajamas. They let me have them on. I didn't have to wear a gown or anything. And they had said to my mum afterwards, like, you can have different reactions from being put to sleep. So she might be tired, she might be this. And apparently my mum said I was hyperactive. I was bouncing up and down on the bed, throwing a tantrum basically because it was Halloween and I was in hospital. And then obviously I went home, everything's fine. And then we basically just told my parents probably at the next appointment that I had liver disease. So realistically, I don't know a point in my life where I've not had liver disease. I don't remember being told that I had liver disease, but I remember going for like lots of different tests because they didn't know what cause either. So I was going for tests that I don't even have now. I remember a test where I had to like drink a liquid and obviously have a scan afterwards. And I remember like an MRI scan and everything. So at that point, they still didn't know I had it. And they just kind of like, you don't really know why you've got it, but you've got it. And maybe at some point in your life, you'll need a transplant. But they didn't really say anything. But what's actually kind of weird was when I was born, I was jaundiced, because obviously a lot of babies can be jaundiced when they're born. And then when my sister had her baby when I was about 10, a health visitor came to the house and had seen a picture of me on the wall. And she was like, oh, who's the baby? How old's the baby on the picture? And my mum and dad were like, oh, that's our youngest daughter. She was 3 weeks old in that picture. And the health visitor was like, she's jaundiced in that picture and she shouldn't have been jaundiced at 3 weeks old. Someone should have picked up on that. So maybe I've had it since I was born, but that's never, yeah.
Right, okay. So at 6 years old, something like that gets said. How did your was you there in the room with the doctor when this was said, or was your parents told privately and then?
I don't actually remember because I'm assuming that I was there. I don't even remember my parents being like told or anything. I just kind of remember from there on going up for appointments and everything. I remember obviously my first biopsy because I know my mum cried, and obviously when I'd have certain scans, because obviously I was 6, I kind of knew that I had to be there, but at the same time I was kind of like, oh my god, my parents are horrible people. Like, you've taken me to the hospital, like take me home. And I would like cry and scream and be like, this is all your fault, it's my parents, bless them. So like I think they just kind of, it was just something that they sort of knew. And obviously my parents were really positive people, especially my dad. So my dad always was kind of like, you'll be fine, you're going to be fine. Like, he always just kind of had that mentality. So I never really thought of it as a big thing. Like, I knew enough to know what it was, but not enough to know the severity of it to the point where it would stress me out as a child. It was kind of just like, yeah, I've got liver disease. Like, it is what it is.
Because I think the only way I can probably relate to that, and it's nowhere near on the same level, is that when I was younger, I had autoimmune, but it was never diagnosed until I was older. So
Yeah.
as a child, around the same age, around 6 years old, I got alopecia, like my hair was just falling out, and so I had to go to the hospital every week. But they had no idea what it was back then. Like, they had no idea what was causing it. They just used to put it down to stress. So I'd be going in every week. But for me, it was like, it's kind of what you said there. Like, you're aware that you're going in for something.
Yeah.
You're aware that there's something that isn't right with your body. But it's like, for me, obviously, it wasn't on the same level as what you were being told. So for you, like, I'm just wondering how, as a child, you would have processed that. But I suppose at that age, there's not really a level of processing going on. It's just, that's just normal. That's just what you have to do, or what you're doing at the time, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was literally like, obviously I was quite lucky because obviously they gave my parents, I've still got them, they've got like leaflets saying like childhood liver disease, and they were saying about like how serious some forms of childhood liver disease can be. And for me, mine wasn't that serious. Like, it was, but obviously I was going for blood tests like once a year or maybe every 6 months. And for me, that was a huge deal. Like, at the time I hated blood tests. So for me, it was kind of like, oh, I don't want to go to a clinic appointment because I've got to have a blood test. But like, that was the big deal back then. It wasn't anything serious. And I was kind of like, I've got to go for this blood test. And I would work myself up massively, have a blood test, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to have to deal with that for another like 6 months to a year, and I'll just kind of go to school, do what everyone else is doing, and I basically did. Like I managed to keep up with all my friends. I was doing everything they were doing. Obviously, my stomach was distended a little bit, but when you're in primary school, no one really notices. Like no one noticed that my stomach, even though like looking back on pictures, I'm like, oh, you can kind of see my stomach's kind of descended. Nobody really asked any questions. Nobody noticed, and I was fine. How did it affect my childhood? It honestly, like, I think I was quite a confident child. Like when I got to like primary school, so I kind of like would openly speak about it and be like, yeah, I've got liver disease, like and I've talked about it and stuff. And honestly, primary school age, it really did not bother me at all. It was literally just any procedures that I had to go through that I was like, oh my god, no. It was more high school age that it started to bother me, because you start to realize, oh, actually, my friends can do this. Or I had like a friendship group of very like beautiful, skinny, teeny tiny girls, and obviously I had a distended stomach. I was still slim everywhere else, but it was just kind of like I looked like mildly pregnant always. And I wanted to wear what all my friends were wearing, and I was like, oh no. And then obviously it delayed me as well. So I literally was like, I feel like a little girl compared to all my friends. But I suppose that's kind of like a universal experience anyway for like teenage girls who like are delayed in puberty anyway. But it was just kind of more noticeable then, because I was like, oh, actually, I was thinking about the things that my friends were able to do, and I was like, will I be able to do that? Or like, can I do that? Can I wear that? Can I go there? And obviously, my dad not so much, but my mum's like was very overprotective. So like, if there was like house parties going on, my mum would be very, very skeptical. It took a lot of persuading to get her to let me go, because obviously she knew my friends were drinking at like 13, 14. And even though I would never have, because I was absolutely petrified, my mum still had it in the back of her mind of, oh, will she, or, and
Yeah.
to be fair, but she was definitely more overprotective of me than my siblings. And I was kind of like, just let me be a teenager.
I suppose at that age as well, though, there's kind of like a level of control over the situation that you're going to try and regain. So there would always be that concern that, is she going to drink, or is she going to do this because she's trying to control her youth, and this is not going to direct what I do or where I'm going. It's like I choose what I do, or I choose what. So that as a parent, you would be concerned about that naturally.
Oh yeah.
But for you though, like going back to when you're maybe a bit younger than like sort of growing up to teenage years, you touched on that your friends would be doing things, or you could actively do what they were doing, but there was a point where you started to think, can I do this, or can I do that? Can I wear this?
Yeah.
In terms of like, from a younger age, like say if you did like sports or anything like that, like like PE in school, was there any ever like a kind of a fear or anything sort of in the back of your mind, like I can't do this, or what if I can't do this, or what did it generate any kind of like, I don't know, like mental blockage where it's like you probably maybe could have or you couldn't have, and you were thinking the opposite?
No, honestly, I would say, because I was really positive as a child, I kind of didn't even think about it as that much of a big deal. Like, I just kind of thought, well, if everyone else can do it, I can do it. And like, I was one of those children, especially my parents, that were like, I would find a way to get my own way. And when I was younger, I wanted to do horse riding. I was like, I really want to ride horses. So I was like, Mum, can I ride horses? And my mum was like, absolutely not. She was like, you can go to ballet or you can do gymnastics, whatever, but like horse riding is dangerous. You're not going horse riding. But I literally begged and pleaded. I was like, please, 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 please. And eventually she was like, fine, you can go horse riding, but you're going to wear a body protector, because of obviously I had an enlarged spleen. And they had mentioned about obviously when I got to high school, you would probably be able to do contact sport and everything. But like, to be honest, I was never really a sporty kid anyway. Like I'm kind of grateful that I wasn't, to be honest, because I wasn't interested in doing like football or rugby or anything like that. But obviously swimming, I did swimming when I was in primary school, and I managed to keep up with all the other kids and get to the same level that they were doing. Sometimes I would be tired though, like I would come home from school and I would fall asleep. Whereas like, and at the time I just kind of thought, oh, this is normal. Like every kid probably sleeps after the swimming lessons. But like now looking at my niece, she's only like 5, but she goes to school, she comes back, she has swimming lessons, she does a nap, and then she's up for hours just running around on the trampoline. Oh my God, I probably didn't have the same energy levels that I thought I did. But at the time I was like, yeah, I do. But definitely, I still think I had better energy levels than when I was like 14, 15, 16. So I definitely was in the best kind of health in primary school, I would say.
Yeah, because you touched on then about feeling tired. So for me, it was a similar thing. So I was throughout school and sort of after school when I joined the forces and things like that. So there was a lot of I'd look because I had no comparison as to how other people feel or how it feels to be normal or anything like that. So to me, the tiredness was normal, but it was when I seen other people just sort of getting up with a spring in the step and me having to psych myself up, and I'd be thinking, how are you not tired right now?
Yeah.
How are you doing this? Like I don't. But I didn't have a diagnosis, so it didn't compute with me. Like, but for yourself, was there a level? Was there ever like a level of like where I said I had to psych myself up? Did you ever think to yourself like, did you have to G yourself up to do things, or was your curiosity and just like um, instinctiveness to get moving just so strong that it wasn't even a passing thought?
Yeah, like it wasn't even a passing thought for me, I think. Like I think just generally I just kind of assumed that if you can do it, I can do it. It was only like when I got to early adulthood that became a thing of like I actually started thinking about it. But like I honestly feel like I was a normal teenager, like normal for the majority of it. Like I would go to bed late and then I'd get up tired the same as everyone else and I'd roll out of bed and be like, oh, I gotta go to school. But like and I would nap after school. But I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of thought I kind of stayed up late last night. And I would like tell myself this. I don't know whether that eventually was like became true or whether it was to do with my liver, but I just genuinely was like I honestly felt like I was exactly the same as everyone else, bar a few things here and there. Like I genuinely did.
Yeah. So going back to the diagnosis, when this was told to your parents about the diagnosis, what what actually led to the liver cirrhosis? What was it that actually kicked it in? Was it autoimmune? Was it something else? Did they pinpoint anything particular?
No, so when they diagnosed me, 'cause obviously I have a lot of people asking me like, what form of liver disease do you have? But I was diagnosed with chronic liver disease. That's all they ever like said. It was chronic liver disease. So obviously it was like slow progressing. And so basically, when I was like 12, I obviously had the enlarged spleen, I had the portal hypertension, obviously the varices and everything. When I got to like 12, I started having, I think I was part of the clinical trials, or they just finished the clinical trials on children. I was getting banding done on my varices every like 3 months. It was every 3 months continuously. They were trying it out, which worked great. And then when I got to 15, they mentioned before that this could happen, but like in the back of your mind, you just think, yeah, that's not going to happen. Like I was just one of those that was like, yeah, that's not going to be me. And I felt really, really tired all of a sudden, like ridiculously tired to the point where like I walked up a ramp that was like so low, and I was like, why am I so tired? I had like a big black bruise up my arm, and I was like, I don't know how I saw that. I was really pale, and then obviously my stool became black, and I was very much like, this isn't right. So I'd gone onto Google and said, I put it in like a symptom checker, said what conditions I had, and immediately it came up with like a bleed, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to ignore that, which is really bad. But obviously, eventually I did have to go to the hospital. And then obviously that was at the point where I think it took me to Birmingham, they banded the varice, and they had put me on the transplant list. I had an assessment because they thought that this was like downhill point for me, like constantly going to be downhill. And that is when they took me off the original medication I was on for like my chronic liver disease, because I was on like Ursifol, vitamin K. That was the point they took me off all that, put me on things like propanolol and all of that medication, and that was when they started referring to it as cirrhosis. Like before then, it was just kind of chronic liver disease. They referred to it as cirrhosis. It was always cryptogenic cirrhosis, which means obviously you don't know the cause of it. And they had obviously looked into the cause when I was younger. They'd looked into like obviously celiac disease, because obviously that can cause liver damage if you're gluten intolerant. It was nothing like that. They could not find a single cause at all. But obviously, it's kind of weird because when I was assessed for my transplant, like this transplant, when I went for the assessment, and obviously we got talking to people in the room, a lot of us in there had another condition or like another health thing that was autoimmune. So I've got an underactive thyroid, and obviously, so there's obviously my mum and dad, and then there's 5 of us in total. 4 out of 5 of us have an underactive thyroid, and so does my mum. So it's quite strong in our family, but yet they don't think that's something for my liver disease. But it's just so weird because there were so many people in that room who also had like an underactive thyroid or some other autoimmune condition on the side. And I was just like, oh my God, like maybe there somewhere it could be a link, but they don't really think there is.
Yeah, because that's the I think the crazy thing, sort of looking at when I was young, and the reason why the diagnosis never got picked up is because there's no history of anything in our family. Like, the only person that had like a health condition was my granddad, who beat cancer twice. Like, and cancer wasn't the thing that took him. So that was the only thing that my family's ever had. Other than that, everyone just is just healthy and just lives out till old age.
Yeah.
So for me, the first thing we said was like, is there anything in the family? When I was, but the run up to getting diagnosed, no, there's not. So there's no like sort of there's no telltale signs. I apologise about the banging. We've had top workers in today.
He's alright.
So so yeah, everything that wants to go wrong today is trying to. So yeah, so there's no early sort of signs really for me. It was just, so I guess for yourself, like in some respects, I look at that and think it's a good thing that you got diagnosed at a young age, but at the same time, like my mentality when I was younger is, even though there was things in the background sort of happening, I was aware. I was quite strongly aware, like not aware. I was quite in my head. I was just, there was nothing wrong,
Yeah.
because I hadn't got an official diagnosis or anything. They were just saying it was stress with the alopecia. So to me, I didn't have autoimmune or anything like that. So growing up, it was just I thought that the tiredness that I felt, everybody felt.
Yeah.
And I thought that doing sport or doing whatever, like everybody felt the same. So to me, it was just like, well, you just need to try harder. You just need to try harder. Like, if they can try harder, you can try harder, and that just become my mentality growing up. I wonder how that would have changed me as a youngster had I been given the diagnosis early, and I wonder how my development would have been. Would it have still been the same, or would it have been different? But speaking to you, you seem to have had the same outlook anyway.
Yeah. I think it depends, like, on your outlook, really. Sorry, someone asked how long do you have to wait for the call. I waited 14 months, but I would have probably waited longer. There was like, I had an infection, which kind of bumped me up the list. Yeah, no, I think obviously some people get diagnosed older. Like, one of my sister's friends actually saw my British Liver Trust story and messaged me and was like, I was diagnosed recently, like, how do you cope? And I kind of, obviously you can't give as much advice as you can, but I was like, I really don't know any different. Mm-hmm. And also, at the same time, I feel like I was very, very lucky, because I feel like there's childhood liver diseases like biliary atresia, where you can become ill as a baby and you need a transplant there and then, like, it's very much downhill. Mine was very much kind of like, I've had it, but it didn't really affect my life massively until I was older. So I feel like I kind of lucked out, because I kind of had time to prepare and know that I had this and process it. But also when the time came, it wasn't like a big, huge shock. Still a shock, but it wasn't as bad. And obviously, when I was younger, because obviously I was always in childhood clinic, I was only ever around children with liver disease. So I saw a couple of kids who obviously had biliary atresia and stuff. And when I actually got listed when I was 15, so when I was first diagnosed when I was 6, and I went for my first ever biopsy, there was a little girl on the wall who was about 2. And you could clearly tell that she knew these nurses. She was like cuddling with them. She formed a bond with them. So that told me that she'd been there a while. And I remember thinking, even though I was only 6, I still remember thinking, like, oh my God, like, I'm so glad that's not me, and I'm not here all the time. I can go home.
Yeah.
When I was 15 and I obviously went on the transplant list and everything, I had said to my parents, I was like, oh, that little girl who was in hospital when I was first diagnosed, I wonder where she is now. And my parents, like, both looked at each other and then, like, looked at me, and I was like, oh. And they had said, like, in the children's hospital, I think they have like a memorial for like children who've passed away, and they had said she passed away and to failed the transplant, they'd seen her name. And I think that kind of really hit me. I was like, out of the children with liver disease, I guess I am a lucky person. I was like, it never really affected my life. I didn't have that experience as my child. I'm grateful now, even though my transplant experience was really, really traumatic for like someone in their early 20s. I'm so glad that I had to do that now rather than at like 10 years old, because I think that would have really changed me completely.
Yeah, it's. I think for me, like when I got diagnosed, I didn't I didn't really get the message from the hospital or the doctors about how serious it was.
Yeah.
I think, and this is no plight on the NHS or anything like that. I think that they're brilliant at diagnosing when they've got a path to find a diagnosis. And I imagine it'd be really difficult to try and pinpoint a lot of health issues a lot of the time. So there's no plight on them. I think the one thing that they probably seem to struggle with is communicating exactly what the issue is.
Yeah.
So for me, when I got diagnosed, it was kind of a case of, oh, you've got this, you've got PSC, and then he had a piece of paper, and he was like, well, he got his pen, and he was looking for a piece of paper and put it out. And he went, so this is what's happening, and he drew like a liver and the tubes around it, and then he was like, so basically your immune system is attacking it, and it's creating this beading effect in the portal vein. And he was like, so this is what happens. So this is the medication we're going to give you. This should help with that. And that was it. And then you kind of sent on your way.
Yeah.
So to me, there was no immediate level of like threat to it. And then I was told later down the line, probably a year later, you're normally looking at a transplant after 10 years of diagnosis.
Yeah.
But I'm like hitting the gym like 5-6 times a week. I'm working all kinds of hours, and I go running 2 or 3 times a week, and I play football on the weekend, and like I'm fit as a fiddle. So in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, it's not going to be me though. Like, it doesn't happen to everyone. It's definitely not going to be me. Like, I'm definitely not that person, because I'm not out every weekend like getting smashed like other people were my age. I'm not, you know what I mean? So it's like, to me, it's like that was just not even a thought. So it's like I think in some ways that helped. I think in some ways that helped moving forward, not knowing, and just. But I think if it had been caught early and I'd have been told early, when I was younger, there was like lads' holidays and stuff like that went on.
Yeah.
That they wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have happened. But I guess for you probably I imagine, like, because you said you've still done the things that you're supposed to do. You're still doing things that other girls your age and things like that were doing. So, did you kind of still experience that kind of like period of your life of going away with the girls on holiday and things like that, or was that kind of like stunted because in your head it's like, well, I can't go out and drink and I can't do this and.
So I did obviously most things my friends would do, and obviously I was kind of grateful for anything that I could do that I thought that I would be able to do. So for all my childhood, they'd actually told me I couldn't go abroad, like on a plane, because of the air pressure. This was something that they had said for years. So through the air pressure and the veins or whatever. And then after I started having banding done, I think that's when they were like, yeah, you can go now. My first on a plane when I was 18. So, like, I was extremely grateful for that, like, just to be able to go abroad on a plane, because I was like, I've never done this before, like, oh my God. And I was really excited to be able to do that. But no, none of my friends actually did do the whole, like, girls' holiday thing, because my friendships kind of changed over the years. And obviously, when I got to, like, 18, a lot of my friends were, like, training to be nurses, or they were in college and stuff, and none of my friends at the time were huge drinkers anyway, which I'm very, very grateful for. And like I'd gone out. I asked my doctor like, actually like can I have alcohol at all, and they were like, yeah, you can have alcohol, and I was like, I honestly thought it was going to be like a never ever situation. So obviously I've had experiences with alcohol. Obviously not the typical out every weekend type of thing, like
Yeah.
But it sounds really bad. But a lot of my friends were doing that underage, like they were in clubs, underage drinking and stuff. So by the time they got to like 18, 19, a lot of my friends weren't really interested in doing that anyway. And they're just not huge drinkers. Obviously, I would have a few drinks if I was allowed to, but obviously, while on the time where I was waiting for a liver transplant, and obviously no alcohol, obviously, and not, even before my transplant, like right before, I wasn't drinking anyway, and obviously it just wasn't regularly anyway. And to be honest, I don't even like the taste of alcohol, so it was only ever a social thing. And like, well, if they're having one drink, I'll have a drink. But yeah, I just didn't really drink. My friends would have a few drinks around me, and obviously I was kind of like, when I got to 18, kind of just like, don't really know who you are, don't really know what you're into, sort of thing. And obviously when you're around people who are drunk, it's kind of like, oh, because obviously you have the annoying drunks and the rude drunks, and you're just kind of there like, yeah. And obviously that's just something that I'll always have to experience now, because obviously people are different when they're drunk. But to be fair, my friends are really good drunks. They're not to the point where they're like paralytic, and I'm like, oh, I'm looking after you now. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
Like if anything, they can handle themselves. They're funny drunks. It makes my experience a lot more comfortable. And they're still aware that I'm not drinking, and they're still like, I just went on my best friend's hen do, and obviously I was thinking, oh no, everyone's gonna be really, really drunk, and I'm gonna be there like feeling awkward and being like, I want to go home. And it wasn't like that at all. Like it wasn't excessive drinking. Like we had a really, really good time. And like my friends were all checking in on me, like, are you okay? Are you okay? So I was really grateful for the friends that I've got. Like I've never had friends that were like, let's go out and drink, let's go out every weekend. So I didn't have that experience, thank God.
Yeah. I guess as well, like that's going to be a natural thing where you end up being the person looking after them. Did you ever find that even though you were what you were going through, that kind of looking after everyone else seeped into your everyday life as well? Because I to put in like as an example, like with my circle of friends growing up and things like that, because I was always the stable one, the sort of mature one that made the right choices kind of person. So the reliable one is basically probably the best word.
Yeah.
And because of that, we probably started out with like nights out or holidays and things like that, and then it took over my normal life, where even though I had stuff going on and health stuff, and I was going to the hospital and stuff, even like in cirrhosis, for example, I found that I still became the person that was looking after like my circle of friends.
Yeah.
Like if they had issues, they were ringing me like, "Oh, this has happened," and I'm thinking, "Come on, man, G up."
For me, I would say, like, actually, so how did you feel after drinking? I always felt like a little bit tipsy, but that's not because I was drinking a lot. It was just because I was never drinking, like, because it was never in my system. Whenever like a tiny bit was in my system, I immediately was like, oh, it feels weird. And so I didn't feel like horrendous. Like, obviously, I can't compare what a hangover is to like drink a lot. Like I don't know the difference. So I can only talk from my experience. I'd have like a little bit of a headache the next day. But then even now, if I go out late, like when I was on the hen do, obviously I wasn't drinking, and after the wedding, the next day I was like, oh, look, I feel like I've got a bloody hangover and I haven't even drunk. So I just feel like it wasn't ever like a bad experience for me. It was just kind of something that I did every now and then, and it was very, very like not often. Do you know what I mean? Like it was not something that I was doing. But yeah. So in terms of my friends, like looking after them and stuff, I would say honestly, like I'm the youngest out of my siblings. So I've always been like babied in life, babied, and I don't know what it is, but I said this to my friends before. I said I think I attract friends that are like older siblings. Most of my friends are like the older sibling, and they're just like I'm really mature for my age. Like everyone says that, like you're so mature in so many ways, but then when it comes to like actual real life, like medical terms, I'm really mature. Like I think about things very differently. When it comes to like normal life, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that, or like how do I change a tire? How do I someone teach me how to park my car? Like So like my friends have always like looked after me. They're the ones that will like do things for me. I'll be the one ringing them with my problems and be like, how do I parallel pack? What do I say to this guy at the till? Like when he asks me this, like I'm the one that they look after, and it's just always been that way. So I think I'm very lucky in that sense because they would always be like the ones checking on me. Like, obviously, I check on them too, but like they know that I'm the one that needs to be babied and looked after. They're the ones that like I'm independent.
So, you think that maybe like being diagnosed from a young age and growing up has shaped that in terms of like you? It's always been at the forefront of your mind how to look after yourself medically, but then maybe confidence wise in other areas of life, you've because you've had that support system, it's give you that ability to allow people to help you out whilst you're dealing with this what you've got going on internally anyway.
Yeah, I think like because I was dealing with like medical side of things myself. Like I was even when I was like a teenager, I kind of was just like I don't want to talk about my medicals. Like I would talk about it openly. I was very much like I've got liver disease. This is this and this. But like when people wanted to like get really deep and like emotional, I'd be like, ew, no, like I don't cry. Like we're not doing this. And then obviously my personal life, I think as well because I was so babied and obviously my mum was so protective because I had a medical condition. I was very much got to 18 and I was like, what do I do? Like actually, like, like how do I live my life? Like I even said to my friends at one point, I was like, when I was 18, I was like, I would rather go to the hospital for an endoscopy because I was having them obviously at this age, like I was awake for them, and they just at this point I was so like used to medical care that it wasn't like something I was nervous about. Like I could confidently walk in there, go for an endoscopy with no sedation, and walk straight out. I was like, I'd rather do that than go for like a job interview. Like I feel more confident in the medical setting than I do in like actual life. And I was like, it's just
Yeah,
it's what I know.
yeah. Because I suppose like from a young age you've had that crash course in the medical sort of arena. Whereas like so your whole focus has been on that because everything's about effectively about trying to be as healthy as you can, or when you're getting sick to be healthy.
Yeah.
So it's the, obviously because like sort of talking about your support system, and this is no plight on anyone's support system in this kind of situation, but was there ever a point, and it's probably there's a lot of people that are going to be feeling this, and maybe people that have got other health conditions that are feeling this, that whether that be physical or mental, but there's a lot of people that are going to feel lonely in that situation because they don't understand the other people around them or, as much as they can support like all the time and be there and be there for every appointment, or they can pick you up and take you in, or they can sort something for you, or and be amazing for you, but effectively they don't understand exactly how you're feeling, and they don't understand the invisible issues that you have. Was there ever a point that you actually felt that way? You actually sit there and you're like, nobody actually knows what I'm going, like how my body feels right now and how my mind is working right now.
Oh yeah, like 100%. Like obviously I had so many friends and like my family were like amazing and like especially my mum, like she always kind of like she wouldn't just be like if I ever said I was tired, she wouldn't be there like, oh come on, like she always kind of would take it seriously and be like, no, if you're tired, like don't worry. And like they would be amazing. But like you do just kind of get to the point where you're like everyone tries so hard to be so supportive. And
Yeah,
you kind of like I get it, you don't get it. Like there's only so much you can do. And then obviously you don't want to sound like an idiot by being like, you don't get it, because obviously they're trying their best. And obviously when I was a kid, they do offer like a lot of support systems. Like they do, I think they did this thing in Birmingham Children's Hospital called like Big Yellow Friday, which was like where like you could get together and go on like weekends away with like other kids with liver disease. And I was very much like, no, like I don't need liver disease friends.
sorry, the naming of it though, Big Yellow.
Yeah, Big Yellow. I thought that
Like you got a load of jaundice kids there. It's like call it Big Yellow.
I thought that. I literally was like, why is that the name? Like, I get it. Like, I was like, why have you named it that? And my mum was like, oh, why don't you just try it? And I was like, I don't need liver disease friends. Like, I'm just like everyone else. I'm normal. Like,
Yeah,
I can do what they're doing. Like, I don't need to make friends with people with liver disease. Like, it's fine. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but just because I was kind of like, I don't want to be treated any differently. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to be put into this group sort of thing. And then when I got to like even in like as an early adult, I didn't speak to anyone with liver disease. It was only, but as much as I didn't speak to them, I wouldn't like go and join these groups. I would secretly go looking for them on social media. Like I would like be searching for like anyone who's had a liver transplant, and I found like this woman who had a liver transplant because obviously no one was really talking about it. And this woman was like, she was like beautiful, like she was like stunning, and like you just want someone who's like, you know, in your kind of category that you can look at and be like, oh, see, she's doing fine. And I would go to these people and I'd be googling all these things. As much as I was telling myself I didn't want to make friends with these people, and then when I got to like when they told me I needed a liver transplant, that is when I joined obviously the Facebook groups you can join and obviously post in there. And honestly, I was like, why did I not do this sooner? Like people were talking about their experiences, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, like I've done that, I've had that, like, and you do just feel like kind of like related to like everyone. You can relate to them, they can relate to you, and then if there's something that you're worried about, you can ask. Like obviously after my transplant, I had a scan or something, or no, my blood results were off, and this was obviously after I'd been at home, so no problems at this point. I was like, yeah, fine. And I had this letter come through the post from one of my consultants, who was like my local consultant, who basically said, yeah, could be something wrong with your bile ducts, you need to go for a scan. And like, it was so brief, and I was climbing up the walls with stress because I was literally like, oh my god, like this is like a massive thing. So I immediately was in the liver chat asking if anyone had any issues with like, you know, bile ducts, what does this mean? And they all responded, and then it calmed me down a lot because most of the time somebody's been through it, so it made me feel a lot better. And I've made like friends now. I'm in a group chat with like a couple of the girls, and like we'll talk about like the color of your poo, like all the things that like you just don't normally talk about. We will be talking about it because like, oh my god, yeah, like mine's pale, mine's too dark, and you're talking about all the things that people just don't really talk about because they don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, I guess because it was like later in life for me, I never really had that. But what I did do is, like, when it comes to the cirrhosis and everything sort of become like more of a threat and more sort of in my face, it was, I did go looking online, and that's when, and it was more of a superficial thing for me than, I was probably, mentally, I was probably not in the right frame of mind to think about what it was, because what I was actually looking for was, because I'd always hit the gym and always been in decent shape. My initial thought was, after being told I needed a transplant, it was like, oh crap, I'm going to get cut open and I'm not going to look the same.
Yeah.
And that was my immediate thought. Like I wasn't actually thinking about, oh, I might, because realistically, there's a percentage of people that get too sick for the transplant. There's a percentage of people where they just don't get the organ, or they have other health issues and things like that. So there was never like that thought in my head of like, oh, what if things could go bad here? Like there was never that thought. It was more of like a physical appearance thing.
Yeah,
I'm
that's the
thinking
thing.
like, yeah. So like I was thinking like, well, I always had a decent stomach, and I'm thinking, and chest, and I'm thinking like, well, that's gone now. Like, and then when I looked at people online, and there's a few people that had transplants, and they were showing pictures of themselves and things like that, but these are like from years ago. So like the technology wasn't probably as good. He
Yeah.
was still sort of working things out, and so there was like a lot of like indents and bits sort of wrapped up and things like that. And my mind was more thinking about that as opposed to the actual health issue in itself.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was until I got really full of fluid and got quite big and things like that I lost that kind of ego, because I got used to going out. Like all my hair fell out. I was bloated. I was, my stomach was out there. I mean, my legs were massive, and then I lost that ego then, because it's like I had to not care. So I had to sort of like let it go, and then that stopped being an issue. I think as well, like sort of looking at that situation with, because my missus has been there throughout the whole process. We were together for years beforehand, and then she's been throughout the whole process. That helped me sort of drop that ego, because she's still here.
Yeah.
Like she's not left. Like, even though I look like this. So it was like, that definitely helped. But I guess for you growing up and going through all these different stages, how did that affect you and your personal life when it comes to like relationships and things like that?
Well, I obviously when I was like going through like high school and stuff, I just really wasn't interested in relationships. I think because I obviously hadn't gone through puberty as well. I think for me it was just like when all my friends were thinking about boys and everything, I was just kind of like, ew, like boys. Like I was still kind of like in that mentality where I was like, I just don't want to do that right now. And obviously, I did eventually go through puberty, and I didn't get my first boyfriend until I was like 18. So I was obviously really nervous because I was kind of like, even though, like now looking back, my body actually wasn't that bad 18. Like even though it was distended, the older I grew, and obviously you get taller, and you get boobs and everything. So like it proportions everything out to the point where but my body was not that bad. Like you wouldn't look at me and think, oh yeah, distended stomach. Like it wasn't that distended. It wasn't even that bad. So. And obviously, I was the same when I was 15. Like, I was complete. My biggest thing was, oh my god, I'm gonna have a scar. Like, ew. And like, my hair's gonna like thin out from the medication and everything. But then obviously, I was taken off the list. I was fine. And then obviously, I got my first relationship, and obviously, he was the first person I'd obviously been intimate with. And I was very much like, he just didn't care. Like, and obviously, realistically, when you think about it, even like girls with different body shapes, whether you're bigger, smaller, like you've got a bit more of a belly or whatever. But you realise boys actually don't care that much. They just care that you've got a pair of boobs or whatever. Like they're just glad to be being intimate with someone. And it's the same really. Like, so I was thinking actually, like, I don't look at my boyfriend's body and think, oh, that's weird, or you've got this, or you've got that. So like it's the same sort of thing. They don't think that either. And obviously I ended that relationship with him. And obviously that was a bad relationship because obviously he ended up cheating on me. And then you immediately go back and think, oh right, is that because of my liver disease? Like, is that because of this? Or is that because I'm bad in bed? Or you think of all these different things that you wouldn't normally think about. And then I was thinking, oh my god, like I got back with him, even though he cheated on me, because in my mind I was thinking, I'm never going to get another boyfriend who's going to like accept the fact that I've got liver disease, even though like now looking back, I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, because not immediately, I got another boyfriend and he was fine with it.
Immediately.
I got another boyfriend and he was completely fine with it, and like it wasn't an issue for him. And he showed a lot of empathy towards my like medical condition. You got to find a balance, I think, because he was kind of like too worried to the point where he'd be like, are you allowed to do this? Are you allowed to do that? And then I'd be like, look, just let me do my thing. Like, I'm fine. I want your support, but I don't want you to be like stressed. And then obviously that relationship didn't work out either. And then I had I said like I got loads of boyfriends. I had those boyfriends. And then I got in another relationship whilst I was on the transplant list. And I was very skeptical about that because I was like, do I want to do that? It's a lot to take on. And he was so lovely. And obviously at the time I had fluid as well. So I was very much like, I had a lot of fluid coming in and everything. I had like an umbilical hernia. And also at the time, like, people don't talk about this enough. Like, you're not interested in sex. Like, you're just not. You're very much like, I don't want to do it. Like, you just don't have the same drive you did before. And he was so, so lovely about it. Like, just the most genuine person I've ever met. Like, he was so supportive, so nice, didn't bother him at all. And obviously, I think at the time it was just mentally a lot for me to deal with anyway, that I was like, I just don't need a new relationship. So that didn't work out. Like, it just made me realise that there are people out there who can take it on, and they will take it on, and it's not a case of like, you've got liver disease, like you. Like, I think because as well, I stress about my own health sometimes, you kind of think that they're going to stress about it just as much as you. And obviously they are in some way, but that's completely natural. Like, same as the way your parents would stress and your siblings and whatever, they're going to stress about it too. And that is normal. You need to let them care about you. It's not a bad thing for them to care about you. And that's what I think I needed to realise at the time, because like, and I always would worry and be like, I need to get with like the perfect person. And I'd be like, well, the thing is, what if I've got liver disease and we have children and then I die, and then they have I don't know, some other medical condition and they die, or we have unhealthy children. You think about all these different things, and actually it's just not that deep sometimes, and you just need to realise that you do not worry about those things. But I think when you've got a medical condition, you do overthink these things so much.
Yeah. Well, I think as well you've got a lot of toxins pouring into your brain that aren't being pushed out from the base of your stomach by your liver, and it's you get a build up of ammonia that run into your bloodstream and just mess with your thought patterns and thought processing and cause brain fog, and so your ability to see things clearly anyway sometimes are shot to bits. Like I sort of explain it to people as like before the transplant, my thought process, it felt like everything had to cut through custard,
Yeah.
and now it's cutting through air. Like that's the difference. So there was a lot of times where you I would overthink things, and I'm not like a someone that really sits there and worries about things. Like even in the cirrhosis, like I'd say 95% of the time I was fine. There was just 5% where I'd overanalyze a situation or overanalyze something that was said, um, or just a reaction or something like that, and then that just would snowball, and it'd take me like maybe a day to get over it or something like that. So it's completely understandable, like trying to navigate the world of relationships and stuff like that whilst you're going through that process.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine like trying to do that. Like I'm, I sort of look at it as I'm so blessed, as in when I did go through that, I was settled in a relationship, like so I didn't have to think about that kind of stuff. But was the was there a level of like in your head, like whilst you're going through that situation, did you look at it as in that you were going to be fine? Like the way you said your dad before, he's always got that mentality of like everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I guess I've kind of got that from my dad as well. Like, so I always have that mentality, it'll work out, everything will work out. So if you've adopted that mentality, going through the whole process, was your mentality that everything would eventually be okay? Or did you sit in the sort of discomfort of things might not be okay?
Yeah, so I think for the most part, I was very much like everything's gonna be okay. Like, if anything, whilst I was waiting for the transplant, because she just how do you cope with waiting for the call? Like, I was excited waiting for the call, like because I got to the point where I was just so ready for a transplant, and in the back of my mind, I was just thinking, this is gonna work out. I'm gonna have one of those easy transplant experiences because I'm young and my body always bounces back. So I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna have an operation, and I'm gonna be straight up and about, and within a week I'll be home. Like that was my mentality, and I just always kind of had that. And obviously, I did have the process where I was like, actually, am I going to be okay? Because when I was so at the time that I was being listed, like the second time, obviously when I was 22, I first of all got rejected from the list. So I got rejected from the list, and the transplant coordinator who rang me was like, "Yeah, it's probably because you're actually probably really like well enough, sort of thing," and was very like kind of insensitive. And then my consultant rang me and was like, "She shouldn't have said that, blah blah blah," and he was like, "I'm going to appeal it because even though you don't have the bad blood results, you have the symptoms, sort of thing." And he basically appealed it and everything. And at the time, when he rang me, he was like, "It's pending investigation at the moment that you're not on the list because we think we've seen something on your liver, which might be a tumor." So I obviously went into like overdrive because I just split up with my boyfriend, like my second relationship, which was like the longest relationship I'd had. I was very much like, "Are you actually joking me? Like, this cannot be happening." And that was the point that I started thinking about all the side effects of transplant and, oh my God, this is going to happen, and or this could happen. And I was very, very lucky because obviously my one sister's a gastro nurse. So she obviously works with liver patients. And my other sister is a biomedical scientist, like hematologist. So she knows a lot. So obviously my mum kind of knew that like I probably needed to speak to someone, but like not her sort of thing, because she was kind of like, I think her sister will do a better job. So she got my sister to like casually pretend that we were just going to go to the pub for like a drink, not a drink, but like just go to the pub. And obviously that was a way again my sister to talk to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, but the thing is, like, I'm in the transplant group chat, and there's always someone who's got something going on. Someone's bile ducts are not working, or someone's got to have this procedure and this procedure. Like, there's always complications going on. Like, it's not as easy going as I thought. And my sister was like, yeah, but you need to realise though, she said, a lot of the people in that group, they're looking for advice and support because they're going through these things. But she was like, there's so many people who have had liver transplants who are not in that group or who are in the group but are quiet in the group because they're out living their lives. They're not going to be in that group 24/7 because they're out doing what you're meant to be doing after a transplant. And then obviously she gave me this really good book to read about like mentality and like manifestation and all of that jazz, and like how like your brain is linked to your like your mental health is linked to your physical health and everything. And I think that just kind of made me realize actually you will, it's not like you will be okay, but like your brain actually does help you, your mentality does help your physical health a lot more than you realize. And then after that I was very, very positive about it, and like every challenge that came after that I was kind of like, it's fine, one step closer to the call. Even when I needed to be drained eventually I was like, I'm one step closer to the call, it's fine. And I did just kind of go all the way up from there, and then until my transplant obviously, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's I think that's the side of it that doesn't get a lot of focus on, is the mental health side of things,
Yeah.
because when I was younger I'd watch a lot of videos and there'd be like a lot of like I've never ever suffered with any kind of mental health or anything like that, so like, and it's never been something within my family, so there was kind of like an ignorance from me towards it, if I'm to be honest. And I used to, because I was always so active and keeping fit and things like that. So in my head, there was very much an ignorance of it, of like, well, just go for a run. What's your problem? Like, and that used to be sort of my mentality. I think when I got sick and this happened, and I realised how closely your body and your brain interact with each other, and I started to understand and learn about how different organs, especially like your liver, is functioning. And then quickly started to go, oh, okay, so all these videos that I used to watch where these influencers and stuff on YouTube would be like mind and body and said blah blah blah. And so I guess they all kind of made sense. And then going through the process of cirrhosis, I realised that there was a lot of there was a lot of chances to develop mental health issues, and there was a lot of chances to get low. Or I think for me personally, I was quite fortunate in the fact that I had the tools to sort of maneuver them and get through it. But I could completely see the pitfalls of like where I could have spiraled and really, really gone downhill. Especially as things started to take its toll throughout the cirrhosis, and my days become shorter, a lot shorter, to the point where I was only awake for 5-6 hours a day or something like that. So I did look at it and think that there should be a lot more emphasis on the therapeutic side of things and the mental health side of things. And I guess there's probably a lot of people that are maybe some people that are listening to this that are looking at it and thinking, well, how if I'm feeling low and I'm feeling like this and I'm sort of nosediving, how am I going to get past this? How do I move forward? So for you, what was the kind of like, was there anything that you put in place or any tools that you used to get through it, or was you just someone that naturally didn't sort of take note of negative thoughts? How did you manage that?
I'm the same, like in terms of like I've never had like mental health like issues. Like honestly, like I've got friends who've obviously had mental health issues and stuff, and like my friends are like, I don't know how you do what you do and how you've done what you've done. Like, how do you actually cope? And sometimes I've had messages from people being like, how do you manage? And I'm like, sometimes I don't really know what to say, because I'm like, that is just how I've been raised, it's how I've been brought up. Like my family are all very like a jokey family. Like even when I had liver disease and obviously I was like, you know, ill, like there would always be some sort of joke we would make around it. Like I was always around positive people. Like mental health was just, we just didn't have poor mental health. But then obviously There was times when I did struggle. I would kind of go like down for a few days, and then I'd be like, nope, fine, like get up, carry on. But I would journal a lot. That's one thing I was doing a lot in 2022. I was like, because I wasn't really comfortable talking to people yet about like my emotional side. I was very much like, ew, don't want to cry in front of people. So I would like write it down, and then I would do like techniques where I would write down like what I'm grateful for to make you actually realize what you've got. And I would constantly be like, every night I'd be writing in this, and it helped me so much. And I know I don't. It's like I do recommend it to people, but I think I wonder, oh, is that a bad recommendation? Like, 'cause is that really going to help when someone's suffering with this and this? But then I'm like, it helped me. I feel like it's underrated as a technique. I feel like it helps when you don't want to talk to somebody, but you want to just get it out. So I just think it just helped me. It's just something that I really enjoyed doing. And obviously, I was reading a lot. I would always, because I read a lot of non-fiction books, so there were always like books around like your mental health and stuff, or like positivity. And I never really needed like mental health support at all until my transplant. But I completely agree with what you said about like there's not enough mention of it, like mental health. I feel like in the children's hospital, when I was assessed for transplant, they did actually bring me a psychologist, which I did refuse because at the time I was very much like, I don't like talking about things. I don't like to get open and deep with people. Like that's not going to happen. I'm just going to push it to the back of my mind. But adulthood clinic, that was not something that they offered. And I was, even when I was in during my transplant, like when it got to the end and obviously I was still bleeding, they just found a tumour on my liver, which could potentially be in my bowel. And they had then said, there's a clot in your liver. And this one surgeon had come in and had said, you're going to get really poorly in the next few days. I was genuinely at the point where I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. Like I physically, like this is my breaking point. And I was like, I'm not having a third transplant. Like this was at the point where I was like, if I die, I die. Like that. And my family were like obviously crying. They were so upset. But even then, you have to push so much. Like my parents had to push and push and push. And I think eventually they paid for like a counselor or a psychologist to come in. And even then, I just, not like saying that it's not helpful for some people, it might be helpful for some people, but like at that point, I just felt like nothing they could say would make me feel better because they said, I think the one question they ask is, if I had a magic wand, what would make things better right now? And I was like, well, that's a stupid question. A working,
Yeah. A working organ, maybe.
would be healthy like everyone else. And I was like, ugh. And they were like, we're going to do follow-ups and everything. And I thought, what's the point? I could be like, not be grim, but I was like, I could be dead next week. And I was just like, this is not helpful at all. I was like, I'll do this myself.
Yeah. I guess again that's probably mentally for you, it's probably a form of control within the situation
Yeah.
as well. It's probably the way your mind's adapted to situations is that, well, if I can control this and I can do this, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a denial in a way to like to deal with the situation, I imagine, because sort of linking back to what you said earlier on about you were able to allow people to help you, and that was something that, you know, with your support system that was good, was being able to allow them to do that, and I think that's probably a very healthy approach to have on it. I think as, for me as a bloke, like it was kind of like, and I still struggle with that now. Like even after the transplant, like my missus in the chat, she'll probably confirm this, but it's like it's even down to things like daily stuff. Like when we come back, so I'm not supposed to lift anything for so many months, and I'm not supposed to do that. But I'm like, because I can feel how my body feels. I'm like, I'm fine. Like stop wrapping me in cotton wool. Like things like picking up the shopping bag or something like that. And my mum and my missus are sort of fussing around me saying that, and I'm like, because in my head it's like, no, I'm a bloke. Like I do this stuff. Like just back off, let me do it. And it's like, but then at the same time when, and I get stressed out about it, it stresses me out. But at the same time, I know that they're doing it, and what they're doing is the right thing. But there's like a level of control in my brain that I can't switch that off, and it causes me like physical stress. So like, there's that sort of like having that healthy I'm kind of learning, like listening to you talk about things. It's helping me in a way, because it's like being able to sort of go, okay, well, I need to allow people to help me. There was a reason for that, and I've kind of trailed off, and I don't know where I was going with that now. I've completely lost where I was going. So we'll move on from that. But yeah, I guess like so wait, when you went in for your transplant and that was taking place, talk us through like the call, how that took place. You know, did you, where was your like? Because I've seen your pictures and your videos and things like that on TikTok. Where someone asked before, Denise, she said like, what was your MELD score?
Yeah.
That I've seen. Where was you at in terms of like when the call come in? Like, talk us through that sort of week or two beforehand, and then.
So when obviously I was being drained, and I only started getting drained around about this time last year. So like I was getting drained and I was filling up quite quickly and everything. And I had SBP, obviously spontaneous bacterial peritonitis, and I had had it one time at first, and obviously it was really painful because obviously the fluid in itself is not necessarily painful. The fluid is just like uncomfortable, I suppose. But obviously, it was extremely painful. I was like, I've never felt anything like this. Obviously, went to A&E and everything, got drained, and they tested it, and it was like, yeah, infection. And my local consultant, my local team were amazing. He was like, you've got SBP. He was like, but your body's managed quite well. And I was like, cool, fab. And he was like, this should possibly bump you up the list. Like, from his point of view, he was like, this should possibly bump you up the list because it is a serious infection. And I was like, fab, thanks. And then a month later, same thing happened. I had the same infection, and again, my body coped. My body like got rid of it eventually with the antibiotics. But this was a point where they wanted to give me a feeding tube because, like, obviously on the scales you look like you're a healthy weight, but you're not because it's all fluid. A lot of it, and the majority of it, is fluid. But obviously, I'm naturally quite slim anyway. I've always had skinny arms, but like my face was more like gaunt. My arms were like slim, and one of the doctors was like, you know, need to up the nutrition sort of thing. So I was trying so hard, but like I just wasn't hungry. But I was like, I kind of was in denial a little bit because I was like, my arms have always been this skinny. But like now looking at them now, they're still skinny. They're still like scrawny kind of looking, but they were not as bad as pre-transplant. So I again hoped, went home, and the next month I had it happen again. This infection happened again. And this time it was so painful. Like I was in so much pain to the point where they gave me Oromorph that I was like, oh my God, like this is horrendous. I had fluid on my lungs. I had turned jaundice this time. They'd given me a feeding tube. I had vomited this up in the middle of the night, like this feeding tube, and it was like stuck in the back of my throat to the point where I had to like rip the tape off and pull it out. And I was vomiting and like, not to be gross, like, but obviously with this infection and the antibiotics were so like persistent in my body, I had literally gone to the toilet 60 times in one day. Like I'd emptied my bowels 60 times in one day in a 24-hour period. And it was to the point where it was like, I couldn't even make it to the toilet. Like it was all over the bed constantly. I've been cleaned up every 5 minutes. It was horrendous. And they were like, and then obviously one of my amazing consultants locally, I'm so glad she did this because even though I was very much coping with like what was going on, I was kind of at the point where I was like, something's different this time. So she had taken my parents outside and had said, I think she's going to go into multi-organ failure if she doesn't get up to Birmingham. So obviously they got me a bed eventually in Birmingham. I went up there onto one of the wards on floor 3. I can't remember what it's called. But I was on one of those wards and they had like, my infection had started to clear up. I was getting better, but like, even in one of the photos, I just looked so ill. And one of the consultants had come around, one of the Birmingham consultants, and obviously my sister was there because obviously she's quite educated, so she was asking questions like, where does this put her in terms of listing, you know? And he had said, this won't bump her up the list. Like, unfortunately, it won't. And my sister was like, well, why? Like, this she could have died, and if it happens again, she could die. She won't go into multi-organ failure. So, obviously...
Could I just ask, just before we carry on with that bit, in that moment when this is happening and you're being told you're possibly going to go into multi-organ failure, what's your thought process of that, and how does your body feel at that time?
Honestly, my body felt so weak. Like I wasn't even like if I'd have been healthier at that point, like and felt slightly more well, I think I'd have been really emotional. But I was so drained and so unwell that like honestly I've never felt so dehydrated in my life. Like I literally was like as soon as I get to hospital, the first thing I'm going to do is have like an ice cold Coke, like a Coca Cola. Like I was just so dehydrated and so unwell. Like, I couldn't even get out of bed. Like I was just like I wasn't even emotional. I was just like whatever. And then
Yeah.
obviously my parents, when we were in Birmingham, had said stuff to the doctors and obviously questioned and queried and everything, and had kind of been like, no, like, how is this not putting her up the list? Like, they were like, this is ridiculous. But obviously, it was because my blood results had come back down a bit from when I was jaundiced. So I was a little bit less jaundiced. I was still jaundiced, but like a little bit less. But I was still vomiting up food. I was still really unwell. And then, funnily enough, um, I always have my phone on loud, obviously, because I was waiting for a call. And this one night, because I was really like at this point, I was very, very like upset. I was like, I just don't want to speak to anyone. Like, leave me alone. So I was asleep, obviously, in the bed. And then it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and this transplant coordinator came in and was like, "We tried bringing you, but there's a potential liver for you." And I was like, "What the hell?" Because I was not expecting it, obviously, because they a few days earlier had said I was going to be bumped up the list. But I think I'm not 100% sure because I didn't really ask, but I think they did change my listing. Because I think originally I was only on they have the regular transplant list and then the other one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one for people who are like their blood results aren't that bad, they're getting symptoms, and they only get like a portion of liver sent to them. There's two different lists. I think I was originally on that one, which is why I wasn't obviously going to get the call. Because I'd been told like a month before what a third and final SBP infection. I'd been told by this one consultant in Birmingham. I'd never seen her before, so I don't know whether she was like a locum doctor or whether she had said, "You're not going to get a call anytime soon because my blood group was O," and she had said, "You're young, so you're seen as." She literally said, "You are seen as less likely to die." And I was like, "Great, fabulous." And
The wording of that anyway, it's
no,
like
literally,
less likely. So there's still a likelihood, but it's just
less.
and also, what does less likely even mean? Like,
I know.
is that less likely in within the next month? Is that less likely within the next 5 years? Like, what are you actually telling me?
No, literally, when she said that to me, I was like, what sort of a response is that? And then I posted a TikTok actually later that day after she said that, and a girl had commented who was like, "I was in clinic today too. She told me the exact same thing." And I was like, great. So she's telling all the patients this then, all the young girls. But yeah, this transplant coordinator come in and said, "I think found a liver for you." I rang my parents, they were on their way up because obviously I'm from Wales. So it takes about like 2 hours to get to Birmingham. So they were on their way up. Waited obviously all day for updates and everything, and then I was just thinking, please let us go ahead, and it did. They come in at like I think I had it through the night, so they come in at like 7 or half 6 or whatever, and then they were like, "Right, ready to take you down," and I was like buzzing all day, like wasn't even nervous. I signed the paperwork, I went straight in, had my transplant obviously, and then obviously I don't really recall being woken up from my transplant. There's pictures of me, like a picture. Cause I said to my mum, I was like, "I want pictures of me on the ventilator. I want a picture of me." And I had these pictures, but I didn't actually recall or remember anything after my first transplant. I sent my friends a voice note and said, "I'm awake, I'm in pain, blah, blah, blah." I don't even remember sending that. And then obviously a few days later, I was back on the ventilator, waiting for another one, which I, again, have no recollection of that. Because apparently in the morning, my sister had said, in the morning of the day that I was going back on the ventilator, my mum was like, "Oh, she needs to start in, we want to get her healthy so we can, eventually go home." And that night, I was put back on the ventilator and said, "She needs another liver." And I was put on the urgent list then to get another liver.
So jumping back to like just before you went in for the transplant, so what? So I'm sort of like looking back to the other month when I'm waiting in the room, the organ's getting brought to the hospital, and it's still kind of not knowing whether it's going to happen or not. And then there's the confirmation, yeah, it's happening. And then you get tucked into like a little sort of curtained area, don't you?
Yeah.
You're on the bed and like your missus and well, for me, my missus and my mum and my dad not around me, my missus's mum, and then it's like, and then they're like, "Right, we're going," and you're getting wheeled off down like an hour or two before you go into the procedure. to the operation. At that moment, where's your head at? Like, what are you thinking at that moment just before you go in for the first operation?
I was so excited. Like I know, like obviously some people are like really nervous and stuff because I was used to procedures and everything. And although like they found the liver, one of the consultants came in and was like, "This is going to be a really risky procedure because you've just had an infection and because of all your like complicated history." He was like, "This is going to be really risky." And I thought, "Thank you for that. That's not helping." Because I knew all that. Like I know, but like at the same time, like choosing to like not look at that side of things. But I was honestly so excited because in my head I was thinking, I'm gonna have this really easy transplant experience, and this is all gonna be over. Like this is gonna be over. Like the infections, the fluid, this is all gonna be over. Like at this point, I didn't care. I didn't care about like the medication affecting my hair. I just wanted some normality back in my life. I was like, I'm fed up of being asked when my baby's due, like every week. I'm fed up with like having to wear like big baggy clothes in the summer. Like I literally just want a bit of normality back. So I was buzzing. Because I was thinking about the after part. Like I was thinking, I'll just have this quick recovery because my body bounces back all the time, and then I'll be out in that couple of weeks. I'll enjoy my Christmas. Like it's all going to be great. And obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah. So I guess when I was in that situation, I was more focused on making sure everyone around me was fine and calm. So I was like trying to crack jokes and stuff like that. So I didn't really focus on the what was about to happen.
Yeah.
So I suppose I wasn't able to get into that place where he was to feel excited about it.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel nervous about it. It was kind of just like I was just focused on everyone around me, and then like my daughter and things like that. And then it was like on the way down, I'm talking to the two nurses that are taking me down. We're just talking about football, and as soon as they heard the accent, they just started like bringing up Liverpool, and then it weren't until we get in and the cannula goes in and they're like, "Oh, we're going to put you to sleep now. This is what's going to happen." Blah blah blah, and they're sort of just running through everything dead quick. And as I felt the medication going into my arm to put me to sleep, the last thing my brain did, my brain went to me just like the old cartoons where it closed down and then like Looney Tunes or whatever it was, Warner Brothers, and you go, that's all, folks. My brain sort of like, as it was closing down, the last sort of thing my brain did was when, oh, this might be the last time you see your mum and your missus and your daughter. And there was like that split second of realisation where my brain just went through about a million thoughts in the space of like probably a millisecond. And then next thing I just remember waking up. And I was like sort of opening my eyes up and just looking up at it. There was a clock directly above me where I am in ICU. And I'm just like sort of opening my eyes. But in the sort of like the coma that they put you in, basically, I put it down to probably the different sort of medication, like sedatives that they pumped into me. As I woke up, I woke up like whilst I was asleep, I had like I lived a life. So as I woke up, like I remember in the dream, I'm like saying to me missus and my daughter, we lived in this big house, and I'm like saying to them, "Oh, I'm going to work," and I put my rucksack on, and as I'm walking out the door, I close the door behind me, and as I look up like to the sun, I sort of just like opened up into the ICU, and I'm looking at the clock above me, and it took me a few seconds to realise that this was reality, and that what I'd just been dreaming wasn't the reality. Did you have anything like that when you?
Yeah. So obviously they mentioned to me about hallucinations with like medication and stuff. And again, I was just like, that's not gonna happen to me. Like I've been on medication since I was 6. Like that's not gonna touch me.
I can handle it.
I remember, and I don't know why I remember this, but I remember like watching a film. It was some sort of film, and it was like some sort of like gangster film with like involving money and drugs and two like groups of people, like old fashioned sort of like high end people. And then when I like like came to the realization that I was like, this is not actually something that I've watched. Like I wouldn't watch a film like that anyway. That's not something I'd be interested in. But I'm like, where have I seen that? Like, I was like, did I watch it before my transplant? And I was like, no, because there's no tellies in the room. I was with my mum and dad. Like, I don't know where this has come from, but I don't remember it. Like, I could like vividly see it in my mind. Like, I could vividly see the characters for like a good few days. And I was like, where has this come from? Like, what film is this? Like, it must be some old-fashioned film, but it's not. And then, obviously, I don't remember much after my first transplant because obviously, I'm so glad I don't. I only remember a handful of days after my second transplant, and I didn't sleep for like 3 days straight in ICU. Like, it was so bad. And the one time I must have fell asleep for not very long because I remember in my sleep, and I remember the exact nurses that were on that night. So they were my nurses, and there was like a big machine, and she'd come into my room and said to me like, if you don't eat something soon or whatever, if you don't do this soon, one of the doctors is gonna have to come in and ram a tube down your throat, like ram a big tube, and I'm like petrified, and I'm like, oh okay, and then she was like, you have to stop the morphine for this, whatever, and then when I woke up, I said to the nurse, I was like, you said well, we have a morphine sort of thing, like I'd asked about the morphine, she's like, you've had it, like, you've had your medication, and I was like, no, I said, because the machine is right there, you turn the machine off, and you said that a doctor was gonna come in, like, no, that didn't happen. I didn't say that. I mean, like, in my mind, this happened, and I was so delirious. Like, for some parts, I was really wide awake, and I remember some of my experiences clearly. And for other parts, I'm so like I couldn't even get a strength test. Like, little paracetamol button they give you is like every so many minutes. And she just explained to me how to use it, and then I was like, I had to call her over again and be like, what do I do? How do I press this? What do I do? And I just don't like remember much, but then I just remember like a few things here and there. But my sister said that when I was obviously on the ventilator, I think after my transplant happened or whatever, that I kept slinging my leg out of the bed, and the nurse had to keep coming over to put it back on the bed. But obviously these are all things I don't remember being taken off the machine. I don't remember any of the things being put in or like taken out. I don't even remember having my stitches taken out. But my stitches were taken out, and I'm like, I don't remember anyone doing that at any point. Like, I don't remember so much of it. But I did have actually a negative experience in ICU. So obviously all the nurses were lovely. Every single one of them that treated me, amazing. But one nurse. So I was in ICU, obviously it was night time, and I was side sleeping. I can't sleep on my side because I could barely move. Like, I literally had to have people like help me walk again because I was so weak. Like, it was so bad. And she didn't give me a buzzer, so I kept calling out because at the time I had a chest infection, no one picked up on it. So anytime I was sipping water, it was going down the wrong way, and I was coughing. And also, where I think I'd been on the incubator, on the ventilator, sorry, for so long, my throat was really, really dry. So I kept calling out to this nurse, and I was sipping water and just spitting it back out over myself. Like, and then I was shivering because I was cold. And then I was like, I was calling out to my mum. I was like, Mum. My mum wasn't there overnight. So I get it, I was probably annoying. But this nurse came in and was like, you need to grow up. She was like, you need to be a big girl. Like, remember, not here, and she'll be back tomorrow. And obviously, we did put in a complaint against her. But apart from that, my ICU experience, I had some lovely, lovely, lovely nurses.
I think I'm very aware that we've been going for about an hour and a half now. And what I'm thinking is that this might be a good point to look at maybe doing a second one, so we can go longer. Plus, we've got this going off next door, and doing a second part maybe in a couple of weeks and finishing off the story, because I feel like you've got a lot more information. There's a lot more things we can delve into, and there's a lot more stuff that I think people can learn from you, because I think, and for myself as well. So I don't want to skate over things too quickly, because I think that we can come back and we can go in more depth around the actual transplant and afterwards next time. That's just what I'm thinking now. Is that shit okay with you?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good segue to maybe, just because we've built up to the transplant, we've got into the just before it, and I think that if we can sort of relive this sort of last bit next time and go into the full, because your story is so impactful in terms of like what happened during the transplant.
Yeah.
I don't want to not do that justice, and I feel like we've done an hour and a half or so now. We'd have to spend another probably hour and a half to discuss that because it's so impactful. But for anyone that's going to come back maybe and watch the second half, I'm trying to think how to sort of a quick sort of brief thing of like what actually happened with the transplant in between, because you mentioned about the second transplant.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't really remember anything around that. Do you remember any thought process just like before we ended? Do you remember any thought process going into that, like in terms of like, because I'm just thinking about myself now, and I'm thinking like I did sort of struggle for a couple of weeks afterwards thinking about if I ever thought about, which I tended not to, but if I did ever think about being opened up, and I had an image of myself laying there with my stomach open. It was like, and that I sort of struggled with that for a little bit for like a week or two afterwards. You went through that twice. What? How do you even process that you've got to go through that again when that's just happened? Or was you that out of it? It wasn't a process.
Yeah, I think I was so out of it. Like, I have no recollection. I don't even have a recollection of being told that I'd had two. I just kind of remember a couple of days, and then I just kind of was aware that I'd had two. And even in my mind, I was thinking, oh my, like, I've had two transplants, like, you know. And I think a guy had come in who had just had a transplant, so he was on the ward as well. And I just thought, oh, he's so like calm, cool, and collected. He didn't make any noise. He was so like calm, and he got moved out of ICU before me. And I remember saying to the nurse, I was like, "Am I going to die?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "He's been moved before me." And she had to remind me and be like, "You've had two transplants. Like, your process is going to be different to somebody who hasn't had one." So I just think from then on, it was kind of like I just kind of knew, and because I didn't remember any of it and I wasn't aware, it kind of didn't bother me. I think if I'd have been aware and I'd have had to be, and I'd have physically said to me, "You need a second transplant," I think I would have genuinely, I think I would have coped less mentally. Because I wasn't aware, I was kind of, by the time I did know, it's already done. It was already done. I've got it.
Yeah, I can suppose I can kind of understand that a bit because not on the same level at all. But when I came out into ICU, I had a bit of like, I think it was like where he nipped something underneath my lung, and there was like fluid gathering there,
Yeah.
and I was like fighting to come out of the sedation pretty early on, and there was like a level of discomfort. So they were aware that like within hours I was fighting the sedation to come out of it, and they were like, "Okay, well, he's looking like he's trying to tell us something. He's uncomfortable, so we're going to look at it." And then they turned me over on the side because they're going to do a scan. And they turned me over on the side, and I instantly started like letting them know that there was an issue with one of my lungs, and so they basically just put a pipe straight through me thing to drain the fluid off from around the base of my lung. And because I think previous to that, my blood pressure and everything had dropped, so they were concerned like I wasn't getting oxygen, so they were concerned like, oh, we need to do something now because if we don't, eventually we could lose him or something like that. So, but it was a simple thing. But when I woke up and I had this pipe coming out of my chest, like it was the same. It was like, oh, it's already done. I think had they have told me and said, oh, we're about to go into your chest and do this, I'd have thought that. I'd be like, no,
Yeah.
no, not at all. It's not happening. You've already got a pipe in there. Just hoover it out or something. I don't care. Like, so I can get that. But yeah, I think now is probably a good time to maybe sort of end it today. I don't want to push you too much, and I don't want to expect the whole day from you. And I think that when we do talk about the second transplant and the whole process from that, I think it deserves a lot more time. So I think we might be best coming back to this, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll call it there.